Wow, look at the group today, huh? Feels like second service. Have you ever been to second service? This is what second service feels like. So if you like this feel, you may want to come to second service, right? Right, Caesar? Yeah, it's kind of like this, huh? Glad you've joined us today. How many of you have been sick this week? Anybody else been sick this week? Just cough out loud if you've been sick, all right? Yeah, I was doing pretty good. I think my body hung through there, Nathan, and through the Christmas program. You know, you kind of willed through it. And then about Tuesday afternoon, I started feeling bad. And then Wednesday and Thursday, I felt like dirt. Well, maybe I don't know what dirt feels like, but that's how I thought I felt. And yesterday was a little bit better. So thanks for joining us. We're actually in this series called Beholding Christmas. And I'm finishing my part today because I will be out with my family next weekend for Christmas. But Jason's going to wrap this series up next week. But here's kind of been the concept that we've been looking at Christmas, we're reminded that life is not as random as it seems. You know, look at that first Christmas story, and there's pieces that seem random, but there's also this connectedness. And sometimes we need to be reminded of that connectedness in our lives, that there is a story taking place, a divine one. And it isn't just a divine story back then. We've been asking and kind of wondering, what if that divine story still takes place today, that there still is a story in your life and in my life, a connection between all those things. And we've been talking about this word, behold, that shows up 8 times in this Christmas story, in that first Christmas. And the word behold simply means to pay attention, but not kind of the pay attention, you know, watch what you're doing kind of thing, but to be aware. And we've been wondering about this whole idea of being aware, and what that would look like this Christmas if all of us sort of were more aware just of whatever God might be doing. And the reason me saying that is this, that beholding doesn't make it happen. That isn't the secret. It isn't sort of the key that if I behold, something special is going to happen. It's not the secret. Beholding doesn't make it happen. It just makes us more open to the happening. And sometimes that's just it. You kind of, you know, sometimes tend to get what you look for. You ever go to a party and think, I'm going to have a lousy time, and you get there and you have a lousy time? Anybody else have those experiences, You know, or sometimes you go and think, hey, this might be all right, and it actually turns out all right. You know, it's kind of our mindset. And I was kind of doing some Christmas beholding this week, just thinking about Christmases in general and just the things to behold, and some of the things that pop out that sometimes when we first see them aren't necessarily great things, but can be great things. For example, sometimes we get what we don't ask for, but what we need. Anybody ever get that at Christmas? You know, remember when you were a kid, you know, and you pick up the package and you knew in the package was clothes, and you went, right? You know, and you try to put on a smiley face. Oh, thank you, Grandma, for the shirt. You know, I mean, it's kind of but it is what you need, right? And you need those clothes, and you're in a sense thankful for those clothes. It's not really what you wanted, but sometimes there's this reminder, and even in that Christmas beholdings, it's reminded again that sometimes we get what we don't ask for, but what we need. You know, every Christmas I probably tell you the same stories, but you know, we had a tradition in my family that on Christmas Eve was the time we went over to my grandmother's house, and we had certain food there when I was a kid. It was what she called baked spaghetti. If you've never had baked spaghetti, you should probably be happy. But it was that. It was baked spaghetti, and she had all this cheese on top, Marty, all this cheese. But when you bake cheese, you know, the oil comes off, and so there'd be like an inch of oil at the top that you had to kind of get through to get the spaghetti. That was early in life. Later in life, we switched to Kentucky Fried Chicken and pizza. I have no idea why that was, but as a kid, that was all right with me. It was a good switch from baked spaghetti. And at Grandma's house, I don't remember what year it changed, but I remember there was some time in probably one of my teenage years when going to Grandma's house and gifts we got from Grandma changed that everybody got underwear. Now, if you were one of our female relatives, you didn't get underwear. You either got a slip or a nightgown. And I remember my grandmother was the one picking out slips and nightgowns, right? And so the older she got, the only question became to come, did you actually get the right size underwear in your package with your name? Because sometimes you get it and go, whoa, that's not mine. This must be my brother's, you know, because it's just way too big. But you know, it asks, and that reminds me of nothing. You know, we weren't asking for that, and it was sort of became part of our family tradition. You just knew what you were going to get. You know, for the ladies among us, it was all about whoever opened the package first knew what everybody was going to get. Was it this a slip year, or was this a nightgown year? Which reminds me of another kind of Christmas beholding. Not only that sometimes we get what we don't ask for, but we need. Sometimes the best present isn't wrapped. Because as much as that was sort of not any kind of surprises on that evening, there was something about those memories that even today bring a smile to my face. Hearing my grandmother, my grandmother's a very crotchety lady, and just to kind of, see her over there and just kind of, she got the wrong side, and she'd kind of blow it off, and make some kind of comment. But it's a memory. It's a memory. It's something that sticks with us. And in my mind, that's the thing to be open to, is what, not trying to create those memories, trying to force them, but what come out of them? What are the things that you remember? Maybe you remember the Christmas that somebody burnt the turkey, or, the cat got in the tree and knocked it over, or, whatever those kind of things. But it's part of that beholding and being open. But there's another piece to this whole Christmas beholding, and that is that sometimes the holidays have some grief. And I don't know about you, for some of you, you may be entering this Christmas without somebody for the first time in your life. Your mom's passed away, your dad's passed away, somebody close to you passed away, maybe a relationship's no longer there. Maybe life has not gone so good this year. You've just lost a job, and now you're facing Christmas. But I think to behold the fact that all of us have a little bit of grief associated with Christmas, and not to sort of push it aside as we're so often to do, but what if we sort of beheld that grief and allowed that grief to kind of remind us of both the joy that we have at Christmas and also the emptiness, those spaces that we all have. Every Christmas for me is a reminder, as much as I push it down, is a reminder of when my dad passed away, because I think it's almost actually 20 years ago, to be exact, this Christmas, on Christmas Eve, he passed away. Passed away about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And Lori and I and the boys were out at some friend's house. We'd gone up there, spent a couple days. We were coming back that day. My mom called me and said, "You need to come home." And I knew as soon as she said that, what that meant. And so I got home, and he was already dead when she called me, and to walk in, a chance to see him for one more time. But I always remember that Christmas because how my mom handled it. My mom went into full-on mom mode. My mom's a very pragmatic person, so it was like simply, we have to hold Christmas Eve tonight because of the kids, which didn't make a whole lot of sense because everybody's kind of blown away what's just happened. But we had Christmas Eve at my grandmother's house with the underwear, while everybody sort of had this theme over them. But it's the reality of our life since then, that every Christmas Eve we're sort of reminded a little bit of that he's not there any longer. And since then my grandmother's passed away, and so she's not there anymore. We don't do, now my brother hosts it, and it's kind of weird because it's not like grandmother's house. My brother cooks all sorts of different things. They don't have Kentucky Fried Chicken or pizza any longer, and it just messed up the whole thing. But my point is that this is why beholding is so important. Because beholding doesn't make it happen. It just opens us up to the happenings. And this Christmas, I hope that you'll, through this season and even maybe carrying it through to the new year, to just be open and be aware of what might be happening in you and around you and even through you. So we're going to look at we're going to look at each of the 8 accounts of the beholding today. But before we do that, I want to invite you to bow your heads and let's pray one more time together, right? Lord, it's that time of the year that we call the most special time of the year. And it is, in its certain moments. But there's other parts of it that aren't so special for some of us. And for some of us, we dread the trips, and we dread who we're going to see, and we dread the gifts, and we dread some other things. And maybe even this year, we're dreading having to go and face all the questions and what happens and what's going on. And so this year, just now as we have a chance to turn again to those writings that you've kept around for 2,000 years for us to look back on and reflect, I just ask you to use them to remind us again of even in the midst of painful things, even in the midst of confusing things, even in the midst of things that we dread, even in the midst of those things that we celebrate, there are some great gifts that you want to bring into our lives. And so I just pray for myself that this year that I would be intent on beholding what you have for us. In your name, amen. You may want to write that down. It's in the notes, but I forget at the moment what it's about, so we're going to go past that, all right? I think it was tied to what we said before. Hey, if you want to follow along, it's there in the outline. Luke chapter 1, verse 20 is the very first behold in this great Christmas story. And again, behold means to pay attention. The first one is this. Now, the word is, you will be silent and not be able to speak until the day these things happen. Little context here. This is the angel Gabriel speaking to a guy named Zechariah. Zechariah is married to a woman named Elizabeth. They happen to be related to Mary, who ends up being the mother of Jesus. I know it's a long, complicated story, but that's how the pieces fit together, right? Zechariah happens to be a priest. He happens to be in doing his priestly duties on this day, and an angel has come to talk to him. In fact, not just any angel, but the angel Gabriel has come to talk to him, and he's told him some news. He's come to Zechariah and Elizabeth in their old age and said, hey, guess what? You're going to have a baby. To which they go, really? At this stage of life? But in fact, Zechariah says to the angel, okay, I'm not doubting you, but what's going to be the sign? How am I going to know this for sure? To which the angel basically says this, my name is Gabriel. I stand in front of God. That's your answer. And because you haven't believed, you will be silent and not be able to speak until the day these things happen, because you did not believe what I told you. But they will really happen. They will be fulfilled at the appointed time. Sometimes there are consequences for us failing to believe. And that's important to know. That's important to know as a follower of Jesus. That's important to know of somebody who's maybe thinking about it. There are consequences to failing to believe. But here's the thing we can't forget in that. That's a gift. Some of you, I know, have stories about that, of consequences of failing to believe, failing to follow through, failing to obey, failing to whatever with something that you knew God wanted you to do, but you didn't do. But in experiencing those consequences, you now recognize it's a gift. There's a gift there. Behold, just a few verses later in 31, behold, you will become pregnant and give birth to a son, and you will name him Jesus. The behold to Mary, right? And sometimes we're caught off guard by God. You ever been caught off guard by God? Thought it was going to go one way and then another way? Something out of the blue pops in your lap. Something goes away that you really thought was going to be there, and you're kind of caught off guard. And in the midst of this behold, we're reminded again that that too is a gift. Another behold. Behold, Elizabeth, your relative. Now, this is the angel talking to Mary, telling her, not only behold, you're going to have a child, but behold, Elizabeth, your old relative, is also pregnant with a son, though she is very old. Everyone thought she could not have a baby, but she has been pregnant for 6 months. Sometimes God comes through much later than we wanted. And that too is a gift. That's why it's so important to behold. A few verses later, Mary said, now this is Mary's behold back. She says, behold, I'm the servant that is the handmaid of the Lord. Let this happen to me as you say. This is Mary's sort of confession of faith here. And then Elizabeth, when Mary goes back to, when you hear the story, Mary hears this news about Elizabeth. She says, behold, I'm yours, God. I'll do whatever you want. She leaves to go see Elizabeth. As she walks in the door to see Elizabeth at her place, Elizabeth says this to her, behold, when I heard your voice, the baby inside me jumped with joy. Pay attention to this, Mary. Something's going on because the baby responded to your voice. Which reminds us sometimes something in us is the gift. And that too is a gift. Verse 48. Mary again, because he has shown his concern, that is, looked favorably on his humble servant girl, behold, from now on, all generations will call me blessed. This is Mary saying something back to Elizabeth, her relative. She's saying, this is an incredible story. I've heard of what's going to take place with me. I've seen what's taking place in you. You've told me your story. This is how I respond. I recognize this is an unbelievable thing that God is doing, not just in our midst, but in our lives. And sometimes our responses convey great faith. Let me think about it for a second. You ever had one of those moments when you've done something, you've sort of followed through with your faith, and at that moment, you're kind of surprised how it worked out? That's a gift. And what I love about all these stories is you wind them all together, there's all these beholds, all these pay attentions, all these see what God is doing, but to recognize in all of them, all the different kinds of things. The things of, being held accountable for a failure on our part, to out of control of our part, to what God plops in our lap, to our responses, all of those, if we'll behold them, are really gifts. This is the famous one, angels to the shepherds. And he says, do not be afraid. Behold, I'm bringing you good news that will be a great joy to all the people. We looked at this a couple of weeks ago. And sometimes the message is bigger than us, which, by the way, that's a gift as well. And you've probably figured out the pattern by now, right, Pedro? You kind of got how it's going to work, right? So there's one more. One more. This time, Mary and Joseph have brought Jesus to the temple, and part of their faith then, they brought Jesus to be circumcised on the 8th day, and on the 40th day, they came to the temple sort of as a final thing, a time of dedication. And so Mary and Joseph have shown up, and there's a guy named Simeon there, and when they show up, he kind of comes over and grabs the baby Jesus, and he says these words, "Behold, God has chosen this child to cause the fall and rise of many in Israel." Which is interesting when you read that, because I don't know about you, when I read it, I think, why doesn't it say rise and fall? Because that's typically how we use that language, right? The rise and fall of someone. That's how we send it. People rise up and then something happens and things fall down. But the angel to this, or Simeon to Mary says, no, this baby is going to cause the fall and the rise to many people. In fact, the literal language there is that people are going to stumble. The fall is kind of a trip and stumble over this baby. Not because the baby's laying in the street, nothing like that, but the idea of what he's going to represent. And the rise there is actually, this is one of the few times in the Bible where it's translated rise. It's typically translated resurrect. So this baby is going to cause not just some people to stumble, it's going to cause some people to be resurrected, some people to come to a new way of looking at life, a new direction in life. He will be a sign from God that many people will not accept. There's that falling part. They'll be spoken against. So that the thoughts of many hearts will be made known. That there's something about how Jesus, and we know this later as you read the gospel stories, that this happens, that people's hearts get revealed. Not just their beliefs, but their hearts. And the things that will happen will make your heart sad too. A sword will pierce your own soul. And so Simeon sees Mary and Joseph, and he takes the baby, and he looks at Mary and says, what you have is an amazing gift. But it's a gift you don't really expect. You don't even understand it all now. This baby's going to grow up to be something special. And people are going to stumble over that. People are going to come to a new life out of that. People are going to reveal themselves as they kind of look at him. And even for yourself, there's going to be some huge heartache. And if you're a parent, you know partially what Mary is thinking about at that moment, right? I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand because I see some of you have your kids today. But right, your kids, they can be heartbreakers. And it's the thing that parents worry about, things that parents pray about, things that parents hope won't take place. And sometimes we hear something that sticks with us. For Mary, this would stick with her. In fact, if you read the stories, that's why you ought to read the Bible, you'll find out later Mary starts thinking about these things. Multiple times as she stops and considered these things, contemplated these things. Because that's a gift as well. But not only that, sometimes we offer something to someone else, and that's a gift as well. And I want you to stop and think for a moment. Who in your life offered something to you that really was a gift? And I'm not talking of something underneath a Christmas tree or at your birthday. But the gift of doing something for you, of putting in a good word for you, of saying something to you that kind of stuck. Even today, if you describe maybe your faith journey, you would go back and say, I remember this person, I remember that person, I remember this other person. And the crazy thing is, if you go back and talk to those people, the vast majority of the time, they don't have a clue that they said that. You ever had that experience to talk to someone like that? And they say, hey, remember when you said this, Eric? And Eric's like, no? Who are you, by the way, right? Dave, I had it years ago. Years back, kind of early internet, email kind of stuff coming out. And I got a letter from this kid that had worked with me at a summer camp one year. And I'd worked with a friend, and I had a friend that we worked a summer camp one year together, and we always were in a kind of the early teen or youth department at what we call camp meeting, this summer gathering where we get together and we do religious stuff for a week. And we always played good cop, bad cop. I always got to be the bad cop. I'm not sure quite why, but that was the role I got. So, Steve was the guy that all the kids loved. I was the one to keep them in line, and it just kind of worked for us. And so years later, I get this thing for this kid. I think the kid's name was Brandon. And he says, oh, by the way, my name's Brandon, and I want you to know, you talked to me that summer, and my life turned around a whole totally different direction, and I'm now becoming a pastor and all this kind of stuff. And I remember I printed off the email, and I went down to Steve, and I said, I think this got to be talking to you, because it can't be talking to me. Because the only thing I remembered about Brandon was that I assumed, and I think rightfully so, that he was at summer camp not to help the kids who were there. He was there because there was a cute girl that he really liked. And it was pretty obvious just how he was going about work. He wasn't interested about working. He was interested just in being around the girl. And the only time I remember talking to him straight was I said, hey, come with me. We're going to go do some work down here. We got to get something set up. And that's honestly the only thing I remember. I don't remember saying anything that had any impact that would change anybody's life. But sometimes it comes out. And it clearly is a gift, because I've had it the other way. See, your circumstances might suck this year. This might be a bad year for Christmas for you. But that doesn't mean you can't find some joy, some hopeful thing to behold. Again, you might have failed at school, failed at a relationship, lost your job, invested in the wrong thing. But the question is this year, will you choose to behold instead of letting the circumstances take control of things? See, God invited the unlikeliest people to behold joy and peace and goodwill because he loved them. When you go back to that list of people, nobody stands out. Zachariah and Elizabeth are just this old couple. Yeah, he works at the temple, but he's not like a major priest. He's kind of one of the guys. Mary, this little girl who's just sort of gotten engaged, and all of her plans have been blown up. Got the shepherds, got the wise men, you got Simeon, you got this lady named Anna who comes and says some stuff. But these unlikely people, God invites to behold something that literally would change the world. The birth of his son into this planet, to this connection. My question as we wind this up is, what if he'd do that for you? And what if you did the same for someone else? In your program day, you're going to find a card like this. If you don't have one, you can grab one on the way out, all right? But I want to help you out this year as much as possible. I want to give you a gift that you can give to somebody that will cost you something, all right? You don't got to pay me for it, but it's going to cost you something. It'll cost you some time. It might cost you a little bit of money. But I want to put this tool in your hand because I think one of the things that you can do is to be that gift to somebody else. And the gift isn't going out and buying them the newest this or the latest that. But maybe the gift is simply the gift of your presence, the gift of your care. And so that's what it says on the front. I'm for you. I'm with you. I love you. And simply return this card and let me know what would be most helpful to you right now, because you are not alone. And then he gives a list on the back they can check out. Because our goal is to help you live out God's kingdom wherever you find yourself. To live out his kingdom wherever we are. And so I want to put something in your hands that will maybe make that happen. Maybe there's that coworker, maybe there's that neighbor. Maybe it's that friend you haven't talked to for a while. But this Christmas, I encourage you to behold. To behold what I had up there earlier and took off. Behold your yearning. What is the thing you really need this Christmas? And to put that out there and see what God might do when you behold it, all right?